Awesome. Okay. Um, so, um, so couple things, and then the main thing I want to do is pick your brain about Mayflower. So I think that's where we'll spend kind of majority of the time. Um, so okay, on social, social's going okay. I mean, we're not super excited by how it's going. I mean, we crossed 100, which is good, but I think we have higher expectations for what we typically do. We have a new guy coming on next week who's going to be helping out on the meme side. I won't ruin it for who it is, but he's pretty well known on CT as a shit poster. So he's gonna help come add a lot more mimetic firepower, let's call it, to the socials. We feel like that's kind of the punch that's missing a little bit. So we're gonna get him up to speed pretty quickly, and he's gonna be helping out Madison there. It's yeah, like I mean, we're open to suggestions and feedback. We've been trying to mix up the content. Not only are we just doing like the educational threads and then like the thread of threads, but we're trying to throw in some quizzes and engagement type stuff, throw in memes up there. Um, Wanted to ask about Twitter Blue. You think is this something that you guys would help out with, or you want us to just grab it? I think I mean like everyone knows kind of since the algo came out that it does have a pretty big boost. Um, so it's not like it's a crazy little cost lift or anything. So I don't know if it's like you guys would rather handle it for I don't know tax or accounting reasons, or you want us to kind of put that together.
No preference, but if you want us to pay $7 a month, we'll do it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that'll help kind of get us a little bit ranking a little higher because the engagement's there. I mean, you look at like even our most average posts, like for 100 something follower account, like the engagement's pretty crazy. I guess like engagement to follower ratio. Just we have like random tweets that'll get like 25 likes. Um, Even like one-liners and like single tweets and stuff. So the engagement's good. The followers and stuff haven't been great. So we think Twitter Blue might help push us in the algo a little more and get us up a little bit. But yeah, the threads are still coming out. We're mixing it up a little bit. We have another meme guy coming, so we're trying to kind of double the firepower on Bean Bull and Bean Farmers. So something to keep an eye out for there. Um, so uh, okay, I guess we could hit Beanifesto. So just so everyone's in the loop, we're working on doing this longer term Beanifesto planning, and so essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to do the whole roadmap, right? We're trying to get people excited about what's coming down the pipeline and get an idea about this entire ecosystem being built. And that's not only just like what's happening on BF, but I see C Mills is here. Is like we're trying to chat with irrigation and roots as well. So we're setting up convos there so that we want to get the full download from BF, right? So we're gonna chat with Guy towards the end of this call about Mayflower, and then tomorrow we're chatting with Poobs after the Dow call, which you guys are more than welcome to join. But we're chatting with Poobs, and they're going to give us a better rundown of kind of wells, pumps, and mostly the stock and gauge system. And so what we want to do is essentially do like this whole big roadmap piece, so that we can kind of get it out there a little bit more and kind of show people like, hey, don't look at like 90 cent stablecoin right now, but look at, hey, what about when this thing gets back to a buck, and like the opportunities and kind of joining the ecosystem for the right reasons of like, hey, we're building this thing where we really believe in this concept and this thesis about the way money should be, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a little bit of a process, but that's kind of that's our plan right now for the month of May. So we're going to do roots. We're going to do irrigation. We're going to cover all the bean stuff. We're going to put it all under one roof. We're going to put out a shit ton of content about it. So that's what to keep an eye out for in May. But in we still have everything in here to take us through May. So giving you an idea about, hey, this is the content that's going to come out. We do need to finalize the Q1 metrics, so we'll do that towards the end of this call as well. But yeah, the regular content is still going to be coming out. And then that'll take us hopefully to the end of next week, and then by this we can get a really good idea of putting together all of that, and then that'll help give us a better idea of when Wells is launching, so that we can plan around Wells launch, which hopefully should be something in kind of June July range. But we'll get the update from BF there. Um, so on the bean side, Mayflower, Wells, pumps, stock and gauge system. Um, let's hit let's just hit long form right now. I know we wanted to kind of get a little bit of a check-in on the kind of Q1 metrics and stuff. I know, Guy, you got a little bit of a chance to read into it, but any thoughts there? Um, or Rob, if you had any questions.
You asking
Yeah,
for my
I
thoughts?
got
Oh
Sure.
yeah, yes. I was asking for your thoughts, Guy.
Go ahead, guy.
Yeah, Randy, you wanna take it away? We had a quick conversation.
Yeah, we just hopped on a quick call last night and worked out some of the key points, and I think some of my um, reasoning behind like the metric analysis was a bit off, and guy gave me some on how to correct that. So it should be looking pretty good. I'm gonna get to work on those edits today, and yeah, I mean, it's overall in a good place. Just needs to be tuned up a little bit. It's going to be a good baseline for where Bean is at right now, and an opportunity to show marked improvement once that does come in the future. So I
Can you
think
give
we're
a
looking solid.
TLDR on the piece?
Yeah, so it's going over all the key metrics for Q1 as it pertains to Beanstalk, everything to do with like the 3 curve pool, new beans minted, and all that good stuff. Yeah, it's basically like a quarterly report style.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So
so yeah, we
I
wanted
was
to
just
go for it,
Yeah,
Guy.
I mean, just want to briefly say, was just telling Rob that, I know you guys had like a hope or plan to get one of these blog posts out every Monday, but from my perspective, want to make sure we do it right rather than fast, and think that the investment in getting things right will pay off in the future. So, just wanted to say I'm not personally not too. Rob, can you mute? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Was just gonna say that personally not too worried about getting out on the dot if it takes a few more days to do some rounds of feedback. So just a heads up on that front.
Yeah, definitely, totally agree. Especially early on, it's more important for us to get it right than get it consistently every time. So yeah, and especially as we start to and every day we're still learning more and more. We definitely feel like we have a pretty great grasp, but yeah, like obviously no one's gonna have a better idea than you guys at BF, and because you guys spend all day on this, and so you guys are definitely gonna have a better core understanding of the intricacies. So yeah, more than happy to kind of like take a beat, and it's something that we push, but totally understand that, like, quality over quantity. So definitely heard there. And then just on a quick aside on um, other pieces that are coming up is we'll get this counting beans one. We have a flavor of kind of stable coins and some more kind of like stable coin um, call it educational content, and then hopefully and then we're going to start putting together kind of everything for long form um, for the kind of roadmap in Beanifesto. So just what you can keep an eye out there on the long form content side. On the PR side, we got a Spaces tomorrow with Fiscus Digital. I'll pull his stuff up. So just so everybody knows, is he's basically building like a kind of like a whole website and an app about like rating stablecoins, and like I guess trying to build like some kind of like credit rating agency for stablecoins basically. Um, So yeah, he knows. Yeah, him and Asfi are friends there. So Poops is going to be on. It's going to be a Twitter Spaces. Then he also takes it and puts it as a podcast and puts it on the podcast streaming places and everything. So that will be tomorrow at um I have the time here somewhere. Um, let's see. Oh, well, that's probably like right here or something. Yeah, Twitter Spaces tomorrow, 2 p.m. Central. So that's gonna be 2 p.m. Central. And there, yeah, it's gonna be pretty basic. Bean convo. I had the question. I'm gonna forward them to Poobs, but it's just gonna be him, Poobs. I might hop in there, and just gonna, he just wants to learn more about beans, ask questions, pick brain. So good opportunity, another place it like in this stablecoin maxi world, about kind of spreading the um the bean message, right? And then yeah, we still have Essential Pod. It's actually like a pretty good podcast that we're gonna be able to get Poobs on. I will show you guys. It's the Decent People Pod. Uh, it's so basically their angle. Matt Leising, he's like a really big Wall Street Journal. Is like ex Wall Street Journal reporter. Um, and there's some pretty big heavy hitters that have come on the podcast. Caitlin Long. Um, Kanav from Jump, Emin Goon from Avalanche. Deornio is like one of the Ethereum co-founders. Like he was one of the early guys who funded Ethereum. Uh, Ryan Breslow, Joe Lubin. So some pretty good names that have been on this podcast, and their angles basically like they just want to talk about like the people in crypto, and it's more so about like the why. It's gonna be a lot of stuff about like why Poops is building this kind of stuff. Why do they believe in Beanstalk? So that's gonna be a pretty good opportunity. It's a pretty big pod. So that was a pretty nice get. And then on the PR side, we're getting the PR team up to speed. They came in a little later, and so we're kind of helping them get totally up to speed on exactly what narratives we want to be hitting and how we want to be pitching this thing out. And the thing with PR is that PR is very reactive rather than proactive. So it's very hard to kind of get a lot of PR coverage when there's not too much to talk about. So we think like this whole Beanifesto is going to help the PR side a lot because it's going to give us a lot of ammo to go to a lot of these outlets and be like, hey, and be able to tell the story about like, oh, these guys got hacked, but then they put in this whole addition to the ecosystem in order to help people recover their funds, and they're kind of rebuilding this back, and this is the only project that's ever been able to come back from something like that. And then we can also hit the kind of main stuff, which is more so about um, the ecosystem and what we're kind of building here and why it's going to be a big deal, and then capitalizing on this like post USDC narrative stuff like that. um, so we got some pods for the PR side, and then I think once the PR team gets like really up and going and they really get all the ammo they need when we get the manifesto stuff going, then they're gonna have a lot of uh, ammo to run with. um, on the BD side, we talked about this last week. We've started to reach out. Haven't got too many bites yet. But I don't know, Joey. Anything else you want to add there? The same thing. It's just like we're really focusing on a lot of this like baseline stuff in order to have been in as many places as possible. Um,
Yeah, we got a guy with like connections at most of these places, and he's been in discussion, but does get rerouted to the form submission for a lot of it. But we're anticipating that we'll be able to put those through, given those connections, and then some of them we don't even need to submit anything for. We can just like edit on our own. I believe DeFi Llama Wiki is doing that, and I'm going to be writing that up, and should have that good to go by the end of this week. And Guy, we can talk about that a little bit more in detail. I'll make sure I'll cross check with you. It's going to be kind of topical. Nothing like obviously too detailed or anything crazy, but yeah.
The big integration that we're working on, and the one that we think is going to add some pretty cool use cases, well, at least a pretty simple use case, is there's this project that's launching on mainnet. It's from the team behind Ola Finance, and basically, like, essentially, what the product is going to be and the integration is going to be is like, you're going to be able to use Bean as your to trade perps, so to like basically be your collateral to trade perps. So like if anyone's familiar with like Gains Network, it's like you deposit DAI, and then when you win, let's say you win a trade and you're up 10%, you close your trade. So in Gains, you collateralize your one DAI, and then you get back 1.1 DAI. We're working on an integration with the team. They're in testnet, but they're getting pretty close to mainnet over the next month. But essentially, we'll be able to like whitelist a perp dex where with pretty little kind of engineering overhead, and then be able to have like a perp dex where we can use Bean as collateral. So you would trade, like, it'd be synthetic trading, whether it be like Bitcoin, ETH, or whatever, and it'd just be like perpetual future derivatives. And you'll be able to kind of put one Bean in, and let's say you take a 10x trade, a 10x leverage trade, and it goes up 10%. Let's say you buy you buy a derivative, a perp future of ETH at $2,000 on 10x leverage, and you put in 10 beans. Then let's say the price goes to 2,200, you're up 10% times 10x leverage, you basically doubled it. So your 10 beans are going to turn into 20 beans, and you'll be able to pull 20 beans out. And then LPs and users, you'll be able to kind of at least for now, maybe instead of silo, but in the future, maybe when we can get it can be another one of these like positive carry tools, like similar to Roots, where once we get fungibility of the silo, then it can be like Bean plus silo in there as your collateral. Um, but yeah, that's something that we're working on with the team. They're in testnet, but yeah, again, like, if anyone has ideas about protocol integrations, we've had a couple conversations with places. We've talked to the Gains guys, but a lot of I mean, as I'm sure you guys understand, a lot of it, there's integrating directly with Bean is a little bit tough because people get kind of scared off by I guess the lack of long term number stability is, I guess, the way I'd frame it. Like, people understand that it's definitely pretty stable on a day to day basis, week to week basis, but people aren't too it too feel too great about the opportunity. So they're still finalizing the name of the project itself, but it's called it's by the team that's by Ola Finance. I can see if they finalized the name yet. They're still engaging like a branding studio to help them rebrand it. Um, but yeah, I'll get that back to you, C Mills. But yeah, like, people are kind of worried about the long term implications of things they're not thinking of like, okay, well, right now Bean's at like 90 or 91, but like, what happens in the off case that like 3 months from now it's at like 87? Like, is that going to adversely affect my protocol? Is it going to add like an attack vector? Is Bean liquid enough where nobody can manipulate it? And is there enough N3 pool where people aren't able to kind of manipulate it? So this is feedback and concerns that we're getting when we try to do these BD relationships. Like, we talked to the Gains team about potentially putting Bean along with DAI, because they're also looking at LUSD, putting LUSD in the DAI pool and things like that. So that's feedback that we're getting, and so that kind of brings us back to the bigger idea, which is that the manifesto is the most important thing that we can work on right now, because we think that can have a pretty legitimate impact towards getting more people excited, getting more people holding, getting more people depositing in the silo, which means like the protocol's overall healthier. And we're there's an opportunity to get a little closer and better peg stability. And like talking to C-Mills mentioned that that irrigation is going to help. I think like showing people the big picture of what's going on is going to get people excited, and then showing them that, hey, there's a roadmap to getting back to a dollar without explicitly saying like, hey, we're getting back to a dollar and waving our hands and everything. Uh, but yeah, just like understanding that like we're trying to have these BD conversations, and that there is deservedly so a little bit of hesitation So that's why the focus is more on these educational type platforms where like let's just get the info out there as much as possible. Let's like update the boilerplates on Beanstalk and all of these places. Let's try to have it presented in as many locations as possible so that there's as much discoverability opportunity as possible. But yeah, just like that caveat that like we're having a lot of conversations and they're not going in too many places, and there's not too many perfect match made in heaven solves right now. But like I think there are a lot more once we can show a lot like a higher degree of stability, long term stability, I guess. Um,
Hey, Ishan. I just wanted to jump in on that for a quick sec. Can you guys hear me okay?
Perfectly.
All right, sweet. So, yeah, I was just thinking about this, and first of all, it's interesting to hear that feedback. So definitely, like, as you have those BD conversations, I think it'd be great to round up all those notes and share them, just so we can try to get an understanding of how people are perceiving Beanstalk. I think Beanstalk Farms would appreciate that as well. So super cool to have that info. I think one thing that came to mind is I agree with all of your points about sort of the sequence of upgrades that's coming, and generally growth in the silo kind of drives us towards a world where the peg is more stable. I think in many ways. Uh, Certainly, if the economics plays out as it has in the past, and continues to be correct there, I think that that's a safe assumption. I guess when I think about maybe how to approach explaining Beanstalk to people and to these potential partners, I suppose we might consider taking a little bit different of a tack there in terms of not necessarily saying or trying to emphasize that, like, yeah, it's going to go back to a dollar and it'll be okay, but more so emphasizing like the sort of advantage of Beanstalk is that it's built to get back to a dollar over time, and like that, like the fundamental value that's giving to these other protocols is the fact that that makes Beanstalk more scalable than everybody else, right? And I think maybe coming from that lens might help reframe a little bit that, like, you are trading off this potential price volatility for what, and I think answering the what for people would be really important. So yeah, just a thought there, and happy to workshop that as well with the rest of the team if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great point, and that's yeah, like that. Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Right? It's like we want to give you guys this feedback, and we can work on kind of formalizing some of that feedback that we're having in BD. And then yeah, like you guys are gonna know kind of the answers better than us. I mean, yeah, like I think we hit some of those same points of like like I like the way that Poops kind of frames it of like, hey, like what actually is stability, right? What are you looking for in stability, right? Dollar's not stable, right? Your purchasing power isn't stable. So like, what is actual stability? Well, like short-term stability is like pretty great, and that's like a big benefit, and it kind of stays within this tight range. And then on the long term, it's like meant to go back to a dollar. It's kind of uh, kind of created, and the mechanism behind it are towards going back to a dollar. So I think that is a great point. Yeah, I'd love to kind of have this larger discussion tomorrow with Poobs at the DAO meeting, if you got some time. And yeah, yeah, I'm gonna hit you up, Silent Chat, because I assume you'll probably be around consensus now. Um,
Yeah, I'll be nearby.
okay, yeah. So yeah, we can definitely. So yeah, I'll shoot you a DM. Um, but yeah, appreciate the feedback there. That's yeah, I think that's a good way of framing it. It's not like the what's the trade off. And taking it from that angle is definitely um preferable.
Yeah, and last thought there is, like, I think one thing that's really important for us to help you guys with as a team is, hopefully, if we all do our job right, we can get you guys to a point where, like, that kind of like that being the response to their objection just kind of comes naturally. And so, happy to, as always, like, have as many calls as we need to make it clear, like all of the ways in which Beanstalk sort of tackles the problems that folks bring up, because we've heard the same thing before, right? And I think that the challenge is probably more like, how do we reframe it for these protocols than anything else. So yeah, I mean, like, if any of this stuff is still unclear, like, let's talk more.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I think on this specific one, I'm not too worried about. But yeah, like I think there's a lot of other areas where we just have pockets that you guys probably have great answers and frameworks for that. that we can still feed off of. So definitely there. So I guess last thing that we wanted to hit was Mayflower. So I mean, I think we have a general idea, but Guy, if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I guess we'd love like a big like overview, and then like for you to kind of dive into it with us a little bit.
Happy to. Okay, so pause me or interrupt me if at any point things are unclear. But what we're referring to as the Mayflower update is primarily composed of three pieces. The first of which we're calling Sunrise Improvements, the second of which we're calling Silo V3, and the third would be like the deployment of wells and whitelisting of specifically a Bean ETH well, Bean ETH pool, if you will. So the first of what Sunrise Improvements we just shared a proposal draft for. So if you haven't had a chance to read it, I would encourage you to do so. Feel free to ask questions in that channel there or anywhere over DMs as well. But so I guess to start off with Sunrise Improvements, there's two primary changes in that one. The first of which is the introduction of a Dutch auction in the field. So what that means in practice is that when we've seen Beanstalk grow significantly in the past, it is often significantly overpaying for lenders. And so, the way Beanstalk works is even above peg, it still issues soil in order to measure demand for soil. And that's used as an input to determine how to change the temperature. And basically, for example, before the exploit, the temperature was decreasing from like 7,000%, and trickling down 3% every season. But even if it was at 7,000%, 6,000%, etc., it was pretty clear that, Beanstalk didn't need to be paying so many pods or minting so many pods in order to attract that credit. And so what having the Dutch auction in the field means, which what we're calling the morning auction, is essentially a period during the first few minutes of every season where so let's say the temperature right now is like 10,000%. If the printer turned on tomorrow and the temperature started to decrease, like the ceiling on the temperature each season would still be decreasing by 3% every season, but during the first few minutes of each season, there would be essentially a coefficient applied, starting at like 0% up to 100% of the max temperature. So there might be there will be a UI for this. I can find it later, like grab you a screenshot of what the interface would look like that I think would help inform how it would work. But again, the core point is during the first couple minutes of each season, there would be a coefficient less than 1 applied to the temperature that Beanstalk offers.
Okay, so basically, like trying to optimize and add another lever to the max temperature in order to, I guess,
in order to issue fewer pods during times of high demand for soil.
And I think to add to that briefly, this is leveraging the fact that the field structures pods in this, in the pod line. And so the reason the Dutch auction works in part is that, one, there's a limited amount of soil available at any given time. And two, if somebody sows that soil before you, you can't have any of it. And so, and also they appear ahead of you in line. So it sort of creates this, sort of perfect economic situation for pricing soil.
Yeah, the attempt is to find the more accurate. Yeah, exactly. The more accurate price, to Chad's point. Like what the real temperature is, what people are actually willing to pay, rather than overpaying.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and so Okay, so that's sunrise improvements.
So there's one more piece of sunrise improvements. The other is what's called in the proposal just like sunrise incentive adjustment, which basically means, so every season, upon the call of the sunrise function, which advances beanstalk to the next season, mints beans if necessary, mints soil if necessary, etc. The call of that function, beanstalk often overpays in beans in order to incentivize someone to call that function. And what part of what this BIP will do is make it such that the incentivization of that function call takes into account both Ethereum network conditions and Beanstalk economic conditions. And so what that means in practice is it'll take into account like gas fees on Ethereum and as well as like the bean price, for example. So you can imagine why those would, be necessary to calculate an optimal incentive reward, because if gas is sufficiently high, you need to pay more beans to reward the sunrise caller, and similarly, like if the bean price is low or high, for example, that would affect the number of beans that Beanstalk would need to pay to incentivize someone to call the function.
And the objective there is to get the sunrise function called earlier, because before it would be a function of like just waiting for the reward, because the reward increases with time, right? So if gas fees were too high, then it wouldn't be getting called early enough.
So this is actually more just about reducing bean issuance, and by proxy reducing sell pressure on beans. As far as I understand it, it should not have any impact really on the swiftness with which the function is called, but it's primarily around the number of beans issued.
Yeah, if it works as intended, and we've tested this and modeled it out a number of ways, we don't expect any variance in the speed. It's worth noting that in the current model and in this new model, the amount of beans issued adjusts the more or the longer it takes for the sunrise to be called. So there's simultaneously an adjustment for the current network conditions, like Guy mentioned, and then also if it's taking a while, Beanstalk will be willing to pay more up to a threshold.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't know if I fully grasp how that produces bean issuance in terms of calling the sunrise function, but I mean,
Well,
if that's
it's more like Beanstalk just default overpays because it's not taking into account those things. So it overpays in order to just be sure that the incentive is high enough.
Okay.
But this will allow the number of beans issued to come down to something a little bit closer to the minimum possible number of beans that it could issue.
Okay. That
Also,
makes sense.
during the sunrise call, Beanstalk actually mints new beans to send to the caller. So they're, which is part of why it increases supply.
And so, like,
Okay,
if Beanstalk is significantly overpaying for the sunrise reward, like, there will effectively be more bean sell pressure than there would be otherwise. It's like, obviously someone could do anything with the beans, but in general they're sold. The beans received from calling sunrise.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's okay. So that adds a lot of improvements. Obviously, the sunrise function, and then temperature, and so ideally, this brings down issues more soil to bring the price of to bring the temperature down. I guess not necessarily soil, but I guess like finding the perfect price of soil so that we can get the right temperature.
Yeah, so if you're referring to the morning option piece, which is like the first half of sunrise improvements, I'd say the primary goal is to reduce pod issuance. And for the sunrise incentive adjustment, the primary goal is to reduce bean issuance. And if it's not
And
clear,
then-
the goal of reducing pod issuance is to just, issue debt in a more efficient fashion, and reducing bean issuance reduces sell pressure on beans. Like all else being equal, you would want Beanstalk to pay less in order to attract credit, and all else being equal, you would want fewer beans to be sold.
Okay. Okay, it makes sense where this fits in. You want to do Silo V3?
Chad, were you gonna say something? Didn't catch that. All right, all good. We can move on. Chad, we can't hear you if you're speaking. Okay, so let's see, Silo V3. So there really are a lot of components to this, and might defer to Chad on the more technical ones, but can talk through a few of them. So Silo V3 is kind of an amalgamation of like 5 or so different upgrades to the silo. So let's see, where should we start? So one of them is the removal of the withdraw timer. So when Beanstalk was first deployed, when you withdrew assets from the silo, you had to wait 24 seasons in order to claim them, i.e. the assets couldn't be dumped for 24 hours. And so initially that number was 24. At some point it was reduced down to 6 or so. And at relaunch in August of last year, it was reduced to the remainder of the current season. So if I withdraw beans at 139, I can claim them at the end of the season, roughly 21 minutes later. And the removal of the withdrawal timer is kind of exactly what it sounds like, in that there's no more claim process. You can simply withdraw and then use your assets immediately. And so why is that useful? So one example of a pain point that the withdrawal timer creates is if you go to roottoken.org and you are able to mint roots using any stablecoin in a single transaction, but you are not able to redeem from roots to another stablecoin in a single transaction because of that withdrawal timer. It requires 2 steps. It requires the initiation of the withdrawal, i.e., like you redeem your roots, you get your silo deposit, and then you withdraw your silo deposit, and then you have to come back later at the end of the hour to claim the beans and sell them, for example. So that should reduce friction on that front, and will also allow things like liquidations in the future. It would be impossible to guarantee liquidations of some sort of bean loan if the beans were in the silo and there was still a withdrawal timer.
So is the idea behind that mostly as a function of helping roots, or are there other collateral benefits for Bean as well?
That's sort of what I'm talking about with loans. Like if you're borrowing against like a silo deposit or like a bean deposit, for example, like it's not possible to have any sort of auto liquidations of the underlying asset if it can't happen instantly. So so you ask, is it specifically for roots? No. It's sort of for, nothing in particular, I suppose. It's just like an efficiency improvement.
Okay. Cool.
A UX improvement too. Like it sucks to have to withdraw and then come back later to claim them.
I can definitely see that. Okay, yeah, that seems pretty self-explanatory there. What we got next?
Okay, so another part of Silo v3 is the tokenization of deposits as ERC 1155 tokens. So that is, I mean, I'm trying to think what's worth saying on this front. Well, as far as using, maybe Brain would have something to add here, but as far as using deposits in DeFi, and deposits are the very thing that have this positive carry that we talk about. Having them conform to some relatively common ERC standard seems like low-hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So that is more of an infrastructure upgrade, if you will. And hopefully it comes with some cool art, but we'll see.
Okay, and so is the idea basically like now we can have like some composability with the deposits, and like maybe there's things to be built on top of there or more use cases and stuff like that?
Hopefully. I mean, it's not like a lot of DeFi supports 1155 tokens out of the box, but some stuff does. Once you have deposits as 1155s, you can trade them in a permissionless fashion on OpenSea, for example, which you can't do today.
Like what's like if there's like anything you can think of that would get people excited besides like, I mean, yeah, definitely trading. Like, I don't know, is there like I don't know, will you be able to like borrow against it, I'm assuming eventually in some kind of way, whether it's like something BF builds or someone else builds, or is that kind of the idea? Like, just give me an idea of like.
Well, yeah. That's exactly right in the sense that like this is not the development of the market that allows people to borrow and lend deposits, but it allows it to be built more easily. It allows that market to be built more easily. Yeah, exactly. It's all about composability.
Yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think that's a pretty easily sellable point.
I mean, I wish I had more juice for you, but like really, that is, I think that's kind of it on that front. And anyone else should feel free to chime in though.
Yeah, I mean, the basic way to think about it is, think about how powerful the composability of the ERC20 standard is for DeFi, right? Like, deposits being 1155s kind of unlocks the same level of composability in terms of how other, trading platforms can integrate and use deposits as tokens themselves. All that's possible, with a custom integration now, but with this migration, it will be just like natively supported. Or like supported via that standard. So you can imagine, I think the most clear immediate example is, right now there's no market for deposits. And this is predominantly due to the fact that if you wanted to do that, you would basically need to go make a market that was specific to the interface or the code that deposits use. But when they're now just 1155s, then any market such as OpenSea, which supports 1155s, will also support trading deposits. So I imagine we'll see, an OpenSea market for silo deposits start to be something that farmers take advantage of, and the sky's the limit from there.
Do you think we can kind of sell it as like almost like the infrastructure for the kind of beanstalk bond market? Because like essentially that's what really it is, right? It's like you're basically unlocking this bond mechanism, more or less. Is that like an?
I mean, I don't know if I would describe deposits as bonds. I think pods certainly resemble bonds more closely. I mean, deposits are really more like bank deposit slips.
Mhm.
but not sure if that's necessarily the language I would use.
Okay, I think that's probably a better one-to-one. Yeah, I'm trying to think about how we can kind of like phrase it. Like, essentially it's like the opportunity for like leverage or rehypothecation, but like those are kind of ugly words that we don't want to use. But trying to think about ways that
Well, but again, this is like the infrastructure that allows those markets to be built, not the markets themselves necessarily.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole point of this is to get people excited about what can come, and we kind of want to tease what are the opportunities.
Totally.
So I think, yeah, that's a pretty good way to kind of frame it and think about it. Okay. Yeah, I think that gives us a pretty good idea there. Okay. What else we got?
All right. So, one additional change
Oh,
is
sorry. One more thing I have on that last one. This is essentially like, is Roots working on the same thing, or are they working on something different as far as, because like that's their whole thing, right? Is like fungibility of the silo deposits and being able to take that positive carry and using that as kind of the liquidity layer, right?
So in the case of Root, effectively what's happening is Root, the initial Root contract that's released on mainnet currently, aggregates deposits, and that means it takes in deposits of different which have different amounts of stock associated with them, and then issues you a single ERC20 token, and the amount you receive is dependent on more or less how valuable your deposit is based on its BDV and stock. The 1155 is a bit different in that what it's issuing is basically it gives a unique, ID, kind of like an NFT for each deposit based on how much stock that deposit should have. And so it kind of encodes, it's like, I guess one step up in that now you get this token, which has your exact stock embedded rather than, in the case of Root, it being this sort of aggregation. Let me know if that's unclear.
Okay, that makes sense.
I
So
mean,
it's slightly.
I would, yeah, maybe to like sort of a different take. I mean, but similar. I sort of think of it as like, you can't really be avoided that deposits are semi-fungible, like they inherently have a non-fungible component to them. And so there has to be some trade-off in using roots, which is roots where roots are, ERC20 fungible tokens. And I sort of think of the trade-off that's made is that, this is sort of what Chad was saying, is that the amount of stock associated with the deposit is not guaranteed. It's not guaranteed that you can get the same amount of stock out. And that's sort of the trade-off that is made. So when you ask, like, is this sort of the same thing that Root is working on? They're both different attempts at making silo deposits more composable, and they each have different trade-offs, is one of the ways I sort of think about it.
Yeah, that gives me.
I want to add one last thing here too, in terms of, thinking about what's possible with the 1155s specifically. And I suppose with Roots as well, though in a different way, which is, currently it's quite a manual process to value stock for deposits. So like if you look at the Discord, right, we have this unripe deposits, more or less like OTC market that has popped up in a chat where people are just trading, some amount of BDV and the stock associated with that for beans. And that's a very manual, sort of hard to parse market right now. And ultimately, with the introduction of the 1155s and the fact that doing that allows those deposits slips effectively to be integrated into any form of market that trades 1155s. Now everybody who already is a depositor, like the entire community, can start to build a better sense for like how valuable their stock position is, and the stock that's associated with their deposits. Whereas right now, I think like that's much more clear when Beanstalk is growing, because it's like, you know, very direct in that you own stock and you earn more beans. But in sort of downside times, I think it's helpful to be able to see that, you know, the fact that you've accrued stock is not in vain, I suppose. And yeah, that's my take. But
Okay. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense on our end. Yeah, I think that gives a pretty good understanding of yeah, that gives us plenty to work with there. Yeah, what do you got next for us? I think we mentioned 5 upgrades.
Yeah, 5 or so. We'll see how many it actually is. So, all right, the next one is maybe what you can call like the rebalancing of seeds per BDV for unripe assets. Not exactly catchy. We'll figure that out. But so if you look at the silo page on the Beanstalk UI, unripe beans are rewarded 2 seeds per BDV, and unripe bean 3 curve is rewarded 4 seeds per BDV. And that matches the liquid bean deposits and liquid bean 3 curve deposit seed rewards. And basically, so if you look at the state of Beanstalk right now, the price is at 90 cents or so, and most of the liquidity in for beans is underlying unripe bean 3 curve deposits, which is to say that there is more than enough unripe bean 3 curve deposits that could be converted to unripe bean deposits that would repeg Beanstalk many times over. But depositors currently aren't performing that conversion. And so it would be good for Beanstalk. And so I guess the question would be like, why? Like, why aren't the unripe bean 3 curve depositors converting to unripe beans to repeg the price? And the answer primarily seems to be the loss of seeds. And so if you convert from a deposit type that has 4 seeds per BDV to one that has 2 seeds per BDV, you're effectively cutting your number of seeds in half. And that seems to be, for the most part, why it's not happening. And part of the reason that 4 seeds per BDV is recorded for liquid bean 3 curve is because when someone approaches Beanstalk fresh and they have the option to deposit beans or deposit bean 3 curve, i.e. add liquidity, Beanstalk would prefer that someone adds liquidity. And so that's why there's a premium rewarded in seeds paid to liquidity providers. However, on the unripe market, no such decision can be made. There's no liquid market for unripe beans or unripe bean 3 curve. And really, all the unripe assets that ever will exist should, at least in an efficient market, already be deposited in the silo. So this is a long-winded way of saying that it seems clear that Beanstalk does not need to be rewarding unripe bean 3 curve deposits with more seeds than unripe bean deposits. And so there's still some discussion to be had on what the exact numbers should be, but it seems like the seeds per BDV for unripe bean 3 curve should be changed to the same number of seeds per BDV for unripe beans. And that could be 2 seeds, it could be 1 seed, it could be 0. And the idea is that once that cost of converting is removed, because there's no additional loss of seeds, that any unripe bean 3 curve depositor will be much more incentivized to convert, and in the process arbitrage the bean price back towards peg.
This also kind of introduces maybe a little bit of game theory, right? Because someone might be wondering, I mean, if the incentive is there, then it makes sense why people would want to convert. If there's kind of no reason not to, but when you have those unripe, the unripe LP deposits, you essentially like have more valuable stable coins underlying that value. The dollars worth of DAI and USDC versus the 90-cent bean. So people might be worried about converting into bean and it still doesn't get to peg, right? Is that, I mean, even though I understand the
Yeah,
incentive,
sure.
is that kind of
Totally.
a thinking that could take place?
So totally agree. There's no guarantees. And you're absolutely right that one consideration that a potential converter might have is the underlying assets they have exposure to. But I would argue that that is likely to be fairly minimal given how tightly unripe assets are coupled with exposure to beanstalk and even just holding beans generally, given that beans only trade against those assets you describe. It's, in my opinion, the risk profile is not significantly different. So, for example, if you hold Bean 3 curve LP tokens right now, well, I mean, whether it's liquid, unripe, etc., and the bean price collapses to zero, you're not going to get any value out of it, whether you have beans or Bean 3 curve LP tokens.
Yeah.
So you make a great argument, and I would just say I think the impact on the decision making is on that front is likely to be minimal, but it's impossible to say for sure. This is all based on human behavior.
Definitely. No, I agree there. And then also maybe like it's a momentum thing too. Once it gets going, then people kind of will flood to convert maybe. Especially if you have kind of a large conversion that does a big push of the bean price.
There are many mechanisms in Beanstalk that tend to work that way, yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that third
I'm
point,
excited about that one.
that third point is a really wise decision because in that way, Beanstalk aligns basically everyone's interest at the same time. Because then the only price to convert would be paying the gas to get the current, basically 10% difference between bean price and the price if it was $1. And also, if that pushes bean price above $1, then the people holding the bean are more likely to regain their value with new FERT purchases. So it's a really smart move.
Yeah, related to that, I would, also note that, if you believe, similarly to what you were describing earlier, Joey, if you believe that other people are going to convert, you want to be the first in order to benefit from the price arbitrage the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think that puts us in a pretty good spot for rebalancing seeds. What we got next?
Cool. Okay, so this is maybe where I will likely cede to Breen or Silo Chad if they're able to speak. So I think primarily the other big change is the way in which deposits are indexed in Beanstalk, which sort of serves as like an infrastructure upgrade for the upcoming gauge system. But yeah, it's sort of like an open question as far as how much you guys want to be talking about this particular point. but maybe I'll just stop talking. Breen, are you able to talk a little bit about the stems change and why that's interesting and or helpful?
I'm happy to kick it off too, and maybe Breen, if you wanna jump in, unless you're at a mic now, just like feel free to throw in any pieces that I miss.
No problem. He says he cannot, so please take it away
Cool.
if you're able.
All right, sweet. So this is related to the piece that Guy mentioned about adjusting the seeds. So kind of the impetus for this whole upgrade was this realization about the unripe seeds, which we just described, and I think Sync dropped a link in the chat to sort of the initial discussion there. So might be good to go check that out for those who haven't seen it. The kind of the technical barrier there was that Beanstalk wasn't originally designed to allow for the seeds associated with a with a token that you can deposit to be adjusted dynamically over time. And so we can't, for example, just like change the number in the code and have everything be okay, because it would mess up a lot of the internal accounting that Beanstalk uses to, basically figure out how much stock your deposit has. So the upgrade here is called stems, and what this upgrade does is effectively make it so that for every token that is whitelisted in the silo, the number of seeds per BDV can be adjusted dynamically over time without breaking the accounting mechanism. And the first application of this is to adjust the seeds, from 4 to 2 for unripe LP, which we think will have the implications just described. But really what it's doing is laying sort of the accounting foundation for a full-fledged stock-based gauge system for the silo, in which, over time, and perhaps, even very frequently, the value or the amount of stock which Beanstalk is willing to give depositors for putting particular assets in the silo is adjusted based on market conditions, based on Beanstalk's conditions, or just based on the sentiment of the DeFi community at large. And so an example of that would be, if you think about the position Beanstalk will be in and call it a month or so, we'll have launched the Bean ETH well, which will likely have a lot less liquidity initially than the Bean 3 curve pool. And imagine that if folks are interested in adding more decentralized liquidity to Beanstalk, the DAO may be willing to offer a higher amount of stock for depositing that LP token, and then in 6 months' time, when that pool grows significantly, adjust it back down. And so all of that is possible now with this sort of accounting change. There's still a pretty good amount of work to do on top of this to enable some like a voting process for that, kind of set up some of the processes for actually performing the adjustments over time. But from an accounting standpoint, it's all there. So happy to answer any questions on that if it wasn't clear.
So would it be accurate to say like a one-liner would be enabling the seeds to be adjusted in real time, like for the future gauge system to use?
Yes.
Enabling the seeds to be adjusted in real time, like by the DAO, for reference.
Yeah, that's correct. And of course, in the future, the DAO could vote to implement some more automated process or like partially automated process. That's all TBD, but the key point is that it is now, from an accounting standpoint, it's possible.
Okay, and that's mostly and so the main impact there is to adjust the incentivization of liquidity in different in
Bingo.
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think we'll probably talk about this more tomorrow, I guess, and we have the meeting after the DAO meeting, where we can talk about the gauge system. But that's exactly right. It's sort of like the gauge system. The way I tend to describe it is like you can imagine maybe a page on the UI where you as a stockholder go to say, here's the optimal ratio of exposure Bean liquidity should have to different assets. And then that can like be an input as to what Beanstalk actually offers as a seed rewards, for example. So if I say, Bean liquidity should be like 80% ETH, 20% 3 curve, and that's what the entire DAO agrees on, and the liquidity is such that that isn't the case, then it will reward more seeds to the assets that will get it to trend towards that optimal ratio. And so this change isn't that. It isn't the gauge system, but it allows the seeds to be adjusted in real time, which has to happen first before the gauge system can be implemented.
That makes a lot more sense now. Okay. I think that gives us
Maybe one last thing to add there really fast, just because it might be relevant to some of the marketing you guys do about this. But the reason that this upgrade, besides that economic reason, is so important and why we even have to do it in the first place is that Beanstalk really tries to take this position of, first being, very gas efficient, and second, allowing Beanstalk, like users to participate in Beanstalk without, having to routinely, update their account and pay gas. There are some technical limitations, like obviously we have, you have to mow right now to claim your grown stock. But in this case, like the reason that the accounting system is, had to be so sophisticated and why it took a little while is it's, we have to engineer a way to account for all of those little changes to, if the gauge system is updating the seeds on, call it even a weekly basis. We want users' accounts to be, reflected with the increase or decrease in seeds that Beanstalk's willing to offer, sort of over time without them having to go, for example, like, migrate their account or something like that and pay gas. So that's currently how it behaves. And, that's just part of the sort of the gas efficiency ethos, I suppose.
okay. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Kind of getting to the why. Okay. Anything?
These last two are a pretty big deal in terms of what consumers like, what people should expect when coming to Beanstalk, and interacting with the silo, positing, having ownership and future Beanians. Like, yeah, these are both super impactful, and will be really easy to kind of form some content around it and push it out. So appreciate the extra detail here.
And by the way, a quick question, Chad. Did we arrive at like not having farmers need to pay gas to migrate and doing it for them?
Yeah, so as it stands, in order to migrate from sort of the silo V2 to V3, farmers will need to pay a one-time migration fee to basically get their account set up with the new system. We looked at having that done, or like having Beanstalk Farms pay for it, but it's just, cost prohibitive to do right now because there's a lot of accounts. So for now, everybody will have to pay, and the cost should be, fairly manageable.
And is it going to be when they update their silo, or will there be like a migrate function
There's a migrate
that
function.
is called separately, and you have to call it before you can do anything else in the silo?
So your silo position will continue to sit and accrue stock as it did before, but new deposits and then any, like if you wanted to convert, for example, you'd need to migrate.
Got it. Cool. Another quick question. Will upon the commitment of this BIP, will the 1155 tokens be minted directly to farmers' wallets?
I believe the 1155 tokens are minted when you perform the migration call.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Cool. All right, so actually those are the 4 things. There's not 5. As far as Silo V3 goes.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that puts us in a really good spot there. Deployment of wells. I think yeah, that's the third piece of Mayflower. You have to do that right now. I know it's pretty late for you. We can also kind of hit.
I'm game.
Let's
I'm
do
game.
it.
So, all right, where to begin? So maybe I'll just talk about like the timeline real quick, and then timeline is like the order of operations, and then maybe explain like why each of these pieces are necessary or interesting. So, on day 0, whenever some arbitrary day, a bean ETH well will be deployed, and hopefully there will be some initial seeding of liquidity. On day 1, a BIP that integrates wells and beanstalk would be proposed. Presumably this BIP will be shared in advance, like as a draft and discussion period. But anyway, and then I guess 7 days after that, let me check my notes real quick. Oh, so okay, so and this BIP would be the same BIP that whitelists the bean ETH well. So I'm trying to figure out the right way to organize this. Okay, so I think there's 2 primary components to this BIP, which we're currently calling the wells/beanstalk integration BIP. So the first part is what I just described, which would be whitelisting the bean ETH well. The second of which, well, okay, so on the first part, it's also whitelisting the bean ETH well, but also facilitating or supporting conversions to and from that bean ETH well. To beans, to and from beans. Chat, do you currently know whether the goal is for conversions to be supported between bean ETH and bean 3 curve?
That's still work in progress.
Up in the air. Okay, cool. All right, great. So the second part, or I guess third part, if you will, for this integration BIP would be updating the Beanstalk Oracle. So in the same way that there's I'm just going to talk about the gory details, and then we can sort of work together to figure out what's useful to talk about from your guys' perspective. But what needing to update the Beanstalk Oracle looks like is that in order for Beanstalk to mint beans, mint soil, etc., based on a well, it will have to read the bean ETH well pump, which is like the oracle in this well's DEX architecture. So all that means is basically if there's a shortage of 100 beans in the bean 3 curve pool and a shortage of 10 beans in the bean ETH well, Beanstalk will mint 110 beans, the sum. So that's what I mean by updating the Beanstalk Oracle. So that's the BIP, and committing that BIP would be the final step of the Mayflower update. That, it's like people ask when bean ETH well. Well, this is when bean ETH well. That would be the last step. This BIP passing. And then we can talk a little about why wells are interesting as well, if that's helpful. But let me know if you're still with me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah, let's hit the impact and kind of why it's cool, and I think that'll open some stuff up.
All right, so Chad, if I fumble, would appreciate you filling in the gaps. But to me, there are 2 or 3 different value propositions. The first of which was the impetus for Wells, is customizable fees, which primarily in the cases of Beanstalk using Wells will be having them be 0 fee. 0 fee because Beanstalk can incentivize providing liquidity organically via the stock system rather than via trading fees. So TLDR, they're customizable, but in the Beneath Well case, they'll be 0. The other is our pumps, which are the oracles for the pools or wells in the overall architecture. And I'll have Chad talk about the composability aspect in a second, but the one thing I can speak about is multi-block MEV resistance. So oracles provided by Curve and Uniswap weren't really built for a post-merge environment. And in a post-merge environment, multi-block MEV becomes possible. And although it's primarily theoretical today because of attacks like that haven't happened, they can. And serious devs that want to build seriously censorship-resistant software on chain should want to use oracles that are multi-block MEV resistant.
Yeah, happy to talk a bit about that, and then also about the composability, if you think that's next, Guy.
Please.
Cool. So, to quickly speak a little bit more to the oracles, because I think which we're calling pumps, because I think they're really important. For those who don't know, what multi-block MEV is basically if you're what used to be an Ethereum miner, now basically a staker that has a sizable amount of stake, you can potentially be able to mine multiple blocks in a row, or propose multiple blocks in a row, I guess is now the term. And in this case, you can manipulate values on chain during that time, including the oracle values, such as like the price of a pool or something like that. And so for effectively 0 cost. And so you have to use some, or we need to use some new techniques to be able to prevent values from adjusting too quickly and causing a rogue block proposer from manipulating the bean price or the price of any of the assets it trades against, for example. Like I mentioned, the existing oracles don't do really anything about this, and they also have a number of other sort of technical problems that make them a little bit tricky to integrate with Beanstalk's minting system. And so what we designed as a part of Wells is effectively the Beanstalk Oracle, which also can serve as an oracle for others in DeFi who want to have that multi-block MEV resistance and some of the other benefits that existing oracles offer. And just to zoom out even a little bit further, what the oracle is doing is effectively tracking the amount of tokens in a well over time and providing some sort of, like, you can think of it like a smoothing factor, which prevents the values from adjusting too quickly if somebody tries to mess with them. So, we thought about, when we were originally building Wells, like how best to build that oracle into the system. And the design approach we decided to take at the end of the day was to make all of Wells, all of the components, composable, which is something that no other DEX has really done as far as we know on mainnet. There's been some sort of attempts at this, or people getting part of the way there but not finishing it out. But the way you can think of it is that when you think about what goes into a Uniswap pool, for example, the Oracle, as mentioned, is one of the pieces, but you have a number of other pieces, including, perhaps most importantly, the pricing function that dictates, the relationship between the tokens in the well, and then, other configuration values like which tokens are tradable. If you go try to deploy a Uniswap pool or a Curve pool, there's a lot of constraints around how those things can be configured. And often the constraints, prevent the introduction of new pricing functions, or they make it tricky, for example, to remove fees. Like you can't actually deploy a Uniswap pool with no fees. And so if you wanted to go do that, you'd have to basically redeploy all of Uniswap and, kind of surgically go change a bunch of pieces of the code to perform that. With wells, we've kind of abstracted all of this out in a way. So now when you go make a well, you can just choose what pricing function you want, and you can choose which Oracle it talks to, kind of like Lego building blocks for pools. And this, does a number of things. One, with the same interface, like the same sort of functions and base well implementation, you can use a whole range of different pricing functions. So the first one that we're working on is what we're calling constant product 2, which is basically just the same as Uniswap, Uniswap's constant product implementation, but for 2 tokens. We can, using the same sort of structure, go and make that work for 5 tokens, for example, or make a version of stable swap, or like there's a couple other stable swap algorithm sort of like versions that have been floating around DeFi that you could go implement. And those are now just these building blocks that once they're written and audited, anybody can just, like, when you create a well, just plug into those, which is a really powerful thing. And I think in our view will sort of encourage the development of more pricing functions that optimize for different things. Like maybe one optimizes for gas efficiency, another optimizes for being able to support a lot of tokens, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of when we talk about composability, we're really referring to the fact that you can plug all these pieces together and create like a well that fits whatever the use case is. And ultimately, I think over time, what we hope is that other protocols which are looking to deploy their own pools, for their tokens, will look to wells as a way to allow them to not have to worry about the engineering of the basics of the pool, like all of that's already done, but will allow them to get some of the customizability that they need in terms of creating oracles and whatever it takes to integrate into the protocol they're developing. And I think that will be potentially a huge driver of interest in Beanstalk and in tokens trading against Beans, given that Beanstalk is kind of the shepherd of the Wells technology, and because we're the first people to go really lean into it, all of the liquidity is going to be in Bean pairs, and that becomes really powerful for other protocols that want to basically deploy their own pool. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff there, so I'll pause here, but ultimately think it's first big step towards some composable architectures on chain that I think can help make Beanstalk being sort of a central figure in DeFi, as well as Beanstalk as sort of a force for development in DeFi, one that is like make sort of put us more on the map, if you will.
This is all recorded, just as a reminder.
Yeah. No, that was really good. I think that like that's what we need, right? Is like we need those things that we can kind of dig into in order to get people excited about the opportunities of investing in the Bean ecosystem, and I think like showing them all the opportunities that we can have and why people are going to look to build in wells, and we can incentivize different liquidity incentives and outcomes in wells rather than other dexes, and we have like this host of benefits, I think is a really important thing that we communicate. So yeah, I mean, I think that's incredibly insightful, and yeah, definitely we'll probably need uh, another run back of this recording for sure. Yeah, I mean,
I just wanted to add briefly, without hopefully not belaboring the point, but to give an example about the multi-block MEV and how that would actually work in practice to attack Beanstalk, because I think this could be a cool thread at some point. But before Beanstalk mints beans, it measures the time-weighted average price over the last season. And for example, in single block MEV, if I take out a flash loan and increase the price of bean to infinity, but it persists over 0 blocks because it's all in a single transaction, then the number of beanstalk mints will not be affected, but it would be affected if you could persist that price of infinity over at least a single block, which is what a multi-block MEV with tech would look like. And so if you take the time-weighted average price over the last season, and even if in one block the price is infinity, that would significantly affect the number of beanstalk mints. And so that is the type of attack that the pump framework attempts to mitigate, or allow you to mitigate at least, through its customizability.
okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good example. Yeah, just yeah, I mean, I think I think that puts us at a good spot for today. We're gonna take this, download this info, probably rewatch this thing, and then prep for our chat with Poobs tomorrow.
Amazing.
So just so we're all in the know there. But yeah. Yeah, cool. Wow. Yeah, this was a lot. But definitely incredibly helpful, and will help us kind of put this together into a nice roadmap. Including the other things that we're going to be talking with Poobs about, like tractors and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So maybe just like 30 seconds on timeline. We just shared the Sunrise Improvements BIP draft. Hopefully that gets proposed early next week. The Silo V3 audit starts today and is estimated to finish May 15th. So hopefully that can be proposed 1 to 2 weeks later after May 15th. And the third step of the Mayflower update will require an audit of the Wells Beanstalk integration BIP, and development of that has not finished, but hopefully it will within 1 to 2 weeks, after which the audit will start. So looking at like early June for this like I said, the final step, which would be whitelisting the Beanies well.
Okay, that's a good idea on timeline. Cool. Yeah, I think that's most of what we have today. Yeah, you guys are welcome to kind of hop in with our call with Poobs tomorrow, and we will take it from there. Yeah, just give us some time to kind of download this. We'll meet and kind of start to form the roadmap. We'll run the roadmap by you guys, see what you guys think, and then we can start to kind of do some fun stuff with it. So, but yeah, this gives us a lot of the ammo we need. Cool. Yeah, I know it's super late for you guys, but yeah, appreciate your time. Appreciate your time, Chad. Yeah, I think we're done.
Appreciate you guys.
Cool.
We'll chat tomorrow. Take it easy.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for everything, Guy. Appreciate it. And Silo and everyone.
You bet. Talk soon.
Bye.